Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Signed, sealed, remembered, Wedding Kisses. And today, we're coming out of that private room where Elvis and Priscilla had their ceremony. We're coming into the banquet hall. There's going to be a press conference, and then there's going to be some cake. So I hope you all stick around till we get to the cake. Hi, Luann, out there at 7 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate seeing you. We're going to get started with this song, which is how Elvis acquired the kind of skills he's going to need to get through today. And those are his karate skills. And this is Crucible of a Warrior. Hi, Colleen. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here.
Born in the fire, Evansville aflame. Hammering Hank carved out his name. 16 and airborne boots in the dirt. Jumping through walls, on baptized and hurt. Karate in Japan, fists like steel. Champion of honor, deadly and real. Sensei, a warrior's no room for doubt. You wear the G or you train and come back. Your eyes a crucible, baby, not a showbiz belt. You bleed, you break, you feel a warrior's spell. Elvis hit the map, but he rolls with a roll. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior, forged in Hank's domain. 30 throws, not dances, a fight. Bones to set, boards shattered on sight. Shoot or elbow, fingertip flame. Every strike a prayer, every cane a name. 6 weeks of fire, no cameras, no fame. Just sweat and bruises, no one played tame. Saw came in, fist like a stone. Said, put him down, break ribs if it's known. It's a crucible, baby, not a velvet crown. You fall, you crawl, but you don't stay down. Elvis hit the map, but he rose with the raw. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior, forged in Hank's domain. All eyes watched the king that day. Would he crumble or would he stay? But Hank saw it, war in his eyes. Not a quitter, but a fighter who rise. From Hollywood lights to dojo dust, Elvis earned it not on fame, but trust. No stunt, no script, just grit and bruise. Black belt truth, not a headline roots. A crucible, baby, not a stage or set. You earn every inch, every beat of sweat. Elvis hit the map, but he rolls with a roar. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior. They burned through the fire, broke through the fear. And the dojo of legends and kings stood clear. Crucible of a warrior. Elvis was here.
Thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today it's the echoes of Wedding Kisses. When we left our last episode, Elvis and Priscilla had just finished their vows. The ceremony was over. They're at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. They've flown there from Palm Springs. It's May 1st, 1967. We can see up on the screen the Aladdin Hotel. And this is where we're going to see the rest of this wedding. Hi, TT. Thank you so much for coming. And once again, I highly recommend TT's ASMR. If anybody is dealing with problems with anxiety or sleeplessness, or they need some relaxation, ASMR does things with sounds that cause autonomic nerve responses, and people report that it helps them relax. And TT really does a great job with the sounds. Now, inside this hotel, the Aladdin Hotel, Elvis and Priscilla, let's see if we can find them. Oh, here they are. They've just completed the ceremony, and this is their first kiss as husband and wife. And so that was very sweet for us to be able to witness, almost as if we were there. And then they head out into the banquet room, which a lot of people are reporting is connected to the suite where they got married, which was Milton Perel's private residence. But some people are saying you had to walk through like some kind of pool area first, and then you got to the banquet hall. So we don't exactly know, but it's fairly close. The people who were actually there are saying right next to it, so that's kind of what I'm going with. Right behind Elvis, we can see Marty Lacker, who was the co-best man, and he's told us a lot about what's going on. So there's a violin, a string bass, and an accordion trio. And they've changed from playing Love Me Tender, which they played during the ceremony, to Here Comes the Bride, as Elvis and Priscilla, holding hands, stride into this banquet room, and they receive a standing ovation from their guests. 80 people. There's 80 people plus roughly the 20 total people that were watching the wedding. I guess that includes them, so 18 other people. But there's roughly 100 people plus the two of them in this banquet room, and 98 of them are on their feet clapping for these two. And Marty Lacker says the ceremony was simple, but the news conference that followed was wild. The guests were escorted to the Aladdin room, where the wedding breakfast reception for 100 people was about to take place. And so I'm not sure at what point exactly that they cut this cake, but at some point they cut the cake, and as is traditional, they feed a piece to each other. And this is Priscilla feeding a piece to Elvis. Hi, Luann. Thank you so much for coming. 7 a.m. there in Australia. I know. I was just announcing it, so thank you so much for being the first one to make a comment today. D. Presley says the wedding held at the Aladdin Hotel was followed by a lavish bash to which the press had been invited. In this picture, you can really see the brocade or the design that I think looks a little bit like Paisley's in Elvis's tuxedo. That was the fabric that he and Marty picked out to make this tuxedo special. You can also see that he has a rather plain but very nice looking watch. And you can see his wedding ring. And while I don't have the big picture of the wedding ring for us today that I've shown in the last couple of episodes, So if you didn't see those, be sure that you go back into the archive and check that out for a really close look. But I think that if you saw those pictures, you can agree with me that that is that wedding ring. You can also see a little bit of Priscilla's ring. She's also got a fairly nice ring on her right hand. And then she's got the big tiara. And in this picture, her eyes are for Elvis. Elvis is looking at somebody else. Somebody off camera. But Priscilla's looking right at him. Hi, Tammy. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Joe Esposito says Elvis and Priscilla held a press conference and the news was flashed around the world. Marty says Marty Lacker, the co-best man. Joe Esposito was the other co-best man. Up until March of this year, they were both co-foremen. But in the middle of March, Marty was demoted after Elvis had a concussion, fell down in his bathroom, hit his head, caused a delay in the filming of Clambake. But Marty says Elvis, Priscilla, and George Klein. Now, George Klein is another high school friend of Elvis's. They really became friendly in 1957 when George traveled around with Elvis and was in charge of the gold lame suit. But then George went on to become a famous DJ in Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis, Priscilla, and George Klein, Joe Esposito, and I were led to a different room where there were reporters and television cameramen from all over the country. This was the press conference, which replaced the 1 o'clock meeting scheduled by the Colonel. Elvis and Priscilla sat at a big table at the front of the room, while the rest of us stood on the side. So Marty's a bit confusing here because he indicates they're led to a different room. But I think he's saying that from the suite, they were led to the banquet room. I don't think he's saying this happened in a room different than the banquet room. And I don't think that because of what other people have to say. Priscilla has an interesting smile here, and this appears to be a pose. At first I thought it was to show the ring, and it is showing a ring, but it wouldn't be her wedding ring because it's on her right hand. But Elvis is again looking off camera. He appears to be engaged in conversation with somebody else or responding to something that they've said. But Priscilla's very aware that this camera is taking this picture because she is looking directly at it. At this point, Colonel Parker invited May Mann, the reporter that we've heard from, and what he termed legitimate reporters to join the guests, the bride and the groom, in the banquet rooms. So the colonel went out because they were all waiting in a room beyond the banquet room. And he said, now the reporters can come in. Only the legitimate ones. And here is a quote that is attributed to Colonel Parker. This is what May Mann says that Colonel Parker said. Colonel said, "Leave your cameras and your pencils and notebooks outside, please." So Colonel had the reporters come in, but he told them not to bring their pencils, their notebooks, or their cameras. Now, based on the pictures that we're looking at, I gotta believe that they took the cameras in, because I don't think these pictures all came from guests. In fact, this one might have, but I don't think any of the rest of them did. And I really don't think this one did either. I don't think it's actually as blurry as it looks to us. I think that was just the source where I found it. That somewhere this is in a much clearer format. And that these were all pictures taken by professionals, men who used a camera each and every day in order to snap pictures for news, for papers, for magazines. And the way that May Mann writes this story, she absolutely had her pencil and her notebook with her. There's no way she didn't. So it's a very amusing statement that it was said. And I don't know if it was like a joke of the Colonel's to kind of make fun of these people for being reporters, or if he really expected them to follow that. She just says that he said it. She doesn't say whether she took her pencils and notebooks inside, but we're reading the story, so we have to kind of assume she did. Otherwise, she has an excellent memory, because she gives specific quotes. And Luann's saying that she can't recall hearing when Elvis and Priscilla got married, when she was in her teens in the mid-1970s. So it would have been just before that. You would have probably heard, like in early 1968, we are going to see some magazines where they talk about this. And I think some of them were from Australia. So, won't be this episode, Luann, but keep coming back. We're eventually going to make it there. And Elvis said to the reporters, I guess you're all wondering why we asked you to come in here. And then he turned and he kissed Priscilla in front of all of them. I guess that was his way of announcing that the marriage was complete and that she was now his wife. And May Mann says, you noticed it was a sweet kiss, full of pride, warmth, and affection, rather than the usual Hollywood movie type of kiss, which anticipates a love scene. He kissed her tenderly. But then Elvis is not usual, nor does he do the usual, but always that which is most admirable. So it sounds like May Mann may have had a little bit of a crush on Elvis, because she says that when Elvis does something, he does the thing that's best, that which is most admirable. And that in this instance, he kisses Priscilla as a newly married bride should be kissed by her husband. Not in a fake way, like a Hollywood movie type of kiss. And on the screen, we can see the picture is now in color. And they have a pink tablecloth, which I don't think we knew before. There's also this cardboard cutout, it looks like, of an Aladdin lamp that says Aladdin on it. Must be some kind of marketing piece that the Aladdin uses, maybe for conferences in this room or other entertainment that happens here. Like a disposable piece that they could put up for whatever is going on in this room. Or it could be a full plastic 3D replica, but it looks to me like it's a flat piece of cardboard. We got Joe Esposito, got a cigarette in his mouth, and he's right behind Priscilla. And there's somebody, their head is just sticking out from behind Elvis, but we can't see who they are. And if you see the wall that's behind Elvis, and there's like these two brown strips, those are hiding divisions in the wall. Because I believe that that is a movable wall. That it could come apart and you could rearrange the room somewhat, or open it up into a second room and make it bigger, or it's just a very thin wall that's permanently there. But that's kind of the sign of that, is though those two, I'm assuming they're probably metal strips. It's fairly common to see stuff like this in a hotel conference room. And Linda, hi Linda Cudden, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Colonel, now Marion has let me know that I'm not pronouncing Priscilla's maiden name correctly, which is more than likely absolutely true. And she says that it's French, and that I should be pronouncing it Bully you or Blue. And I'm sure that's not quite correct either, the way I'm saying it, but maybe Marion can help me out again once she says it. She had the word bully with an O that has a couple of dots over it. And in America, like, we don't use any stuff over the top. So I'm not quite sure what the pronunciation on that is. She said it was kind of like a U. So I think it's bully you or blue, something like that. So that's what I'm gonna use, blue. But Priscilla's father, he said our little girl is going to be a good wife. Hi Gunn, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. You're here just in time to hear Priscilla's father say our little girl is going to be a good wife. And Linda Cudden says, bowl you. Okay, bowl you. But here's another picture of Elvis and Priscilla. They have huge smiles on their face in this picture. They both appear to be very happy. There must have been a joke that was just said. Because Elvis he's laughing. He's in the middle of a laugh. And Marty Lacker says, the reporters started firing questions at Elvis. What made you finally get married? Why did you give up bachelorhood? How long were you engaged? Why this and how that? Elvis and Priscilla handled the questions nicely. And Mayman says that Priscilla deferred on every question to Elvis. So she didn't really jump out and answer any questions. She looked at Elvis and he took the lead, or he allowed her to answer, but she was really leaving this up to Elvis. And Linda Cudden says this is actually a lovely pic and that Elvis looks great. Here is a more formal picture of Elvis and Priscilla. Again, you can see the brocade in his tux. Really stands out in this black and white picture. Priscilla does not have much of a smile. Neither of them have a smile in their face in this picture, but neither are they frowning. They're just kind of looking directly into the camera. Obviously a posed picture. And one reporter said, "Why did you get married now?" And Elvis said, "Well, I guess it was about time. In this picture, Elvis and Priscilla are looking into each other's eyes, holding hands. This may have been directly after they got married, after the ceremony. I'm not sure. Linda says that in that last pic, they both look bemused, which they kind of did. Another reporter asked, how long was the marriage ceremony? That seems like kind of a weird question, right? Because they were right outside, and Elvis and Priscilla went in, and they spent a few minutes talking to the judge, and then they had the proceedings, and then they came out, and I would say at maximum, they were in there 15 minutes, maybe 20. But this reporter, who is waiting the entire time, he wants to know how long was the marriage ceremony. And Elvis says, I'm still nervous. I guess it was something like 3 minutes. It seemed more like 8. Now, Mayman, the reporter who was also there, she says the ceremony began at exactly 9:41 a.m. and lasted 10 minutes. Now, another source told us it started at 9:30, and I think Joe Esposito told us it started at 10 a.m. But May is indicating it was 9:41 a.m., which is a lot more specific than any of the others, which I don't know if that makes me believe her more or not. But it's certainly a very specific time, 9:41 a.m., and it was over at 5:51 a.m. or 9:51 a.m., 10 minutes later. And therefore, they were walking into this banquet room like shortly before 10 a.m. in the morning. So they've gotten married first thing in the day. Here's another picture of the happy couple. And Priscilla's looking straight into Elvis's eyes. They're seated next to each other. I believe this is absolutely at the press conference or the reception, which is basically the same thing. I think they're in the same room. And they do have beautiful looks on their faces. And a reporter asked, how long was your engagement? Elvis said, we decided 6 months ago. So 6 months ago would put that like right at the end of November or back into November. And from what we know of the timeline, Elvis asked Priscilla in December. So that's pretty close to 6 months. And to Elvis, who's been through a concussion, he's filmed a whole movie, he's bought the Circle G Ranch and filled it with buildings and horses and trucks. He filled up his whole barn at Graceland with a bunch of horses, having never really been into horses before early or mid-December. And he came back from a long ride from California to Memphis, where they stopped several times on the way in and called George Clyde and asked him to play over and over The Green, Green Grass of Home, which was a new song at the time by Tom Jones. So it probably seems like when you mush all that together, it probably seems like years. And he said 6 months. So that seems fairly accurate to me. And Linda Cudden says that she'd heard it was a 10-minute ceremony as well. And Linda says that to her, Priscilla's looking in Elvis's eyes and seeing dollar signs. And Tammy says that was her exact thought. I think it is possible that Priscilla is looking at material gain at this moment. However, her dreams of material gain are very, very small right now compared to what they will be, say, in 1977. So these are very, very small dreams at this moment. Her idea of wealth is very small. And Luann says it's so very hard to judge Elvis and Priscilla, though. That is a really good point, Luann. And one thing that we should always remember is that emotions, they're not logical. And they don't follow any rationale. And they don't make any sense. And emotions don't have to make sense with each other inside one person. We're all full of dichotomy and things that disagree within us, and yet we exist as a single being. So these are very complex people with very complex emotions in the middle of a complex relationship that's complicated with more complexity because of the number of people around them, and then multiplied by the material wealth that's inserted into the whole mix, and the fame, and the cameras, and the reporters, and I really have no interest in judging them, either of them. I just like to know what they were thinking at the time. I'm trying to figure out. It's obvious to me that Elvis loves her here, that he is deeply in love with Priscilla. At some point, that changes for him. And is it something that Priscilla does specifically, or is it just Elvis that changes, or is it something Elvis does that changes the way he feels? And she's very young here, and I kind of do believe that she really does love Elvis to whatever extent that's possible for Priscilla to love someone. She's human just like everybody else, even if ultimately she does bad things. So at some point, she becomes tarnished and corrupted. And I think it could have started right here with the wedding. It probably started before. But we know that she was introduced to how you value riches and wealth during this wedding process by her friend Joni Esposito. Doesn't mean she didn't already covet wealth, just meant that she didn't know how to judge it. And Luann says it's because it's hard to judge them because they have these happy faces. I think they're truly happy in this moment. But as Elvis says, we decided 6 months ago, to the reporter's question, he turns. And he turns to his father, Vernon, who's sitting next to him, who we can't see in the picture. And he says, "Hey, Daddy, help me." You know, these reporters are asking him a lot of these pointed questions, and Elvis is having fun with it. But he turns to Vernon and says, "Hey, Daddy, help me." He's basically telling Vernon to jump in and say something. And Vernon says, "I can't reach you, son. You just slipped through my fingers." So Vernon basically says that Elvis is on his own with these reporters. And then Colonel Parker, the way Marty Lacker puts it, is then the Colonel, in his way, let it be known that the session was over. And here's the way that May Mann says that Colonel Parker said the session was over. The Colonel said, "Remember, you can't end bachelorhood without getting married." So there's some wisdom from Colonel Parker. Remember, you can't end bachelorhood without getting married. And Priscilla Presley, who is now Presley, she says, "Mrs. Elvis Presley, for the first time, I felt accepted by my peers and the majority of the public. So while we've had some speculation that what might have been important to Priscilla in this moment was materialistic gain, wealth, money, Priscilla says what was important was that she was now accepted by her peers and the majority of the public. The opinions of people external to her marriage, she felt for the first time were of a high opinion of her, I believe is what she's saying. So that to Priscilla, what other people think is very important. And that's on her mind during this wedding. I'm not sure that's what should be on your mind during a wedding, or one of the reasons that you get married. I don't know if most people would say it has something to do with how others will see them. But being Mrs. Elvis Presley brought Priscilla some kind of peace about being accepted by her peers and the majority of the public. And Tammy says that she does not believe that Elvis was in love with Priscilla. Everybody gets to have their opinion here, Tammy. So I don't know if he was or he wasn't. I'm just bringing us the source material, which includes these pictures and documents that he signed, like the marriage certificate and stuff like that. But we don't know what actually went on in his mind. We just have these pieces to look at, and each of us come to our own opinion. And he may have just been making the best of this particular day. I do believe he truly wanted to be married. Now, whether it was Priscilla or not, I mean, I think we each have to come to that opinion on our own, but he's told us many times he wants to be married and he wants to have children. He wants a good woman to be the mother of his children. He's known Priscilla for a long time, so maybe he thinks that because he's known her so long, she'll be that good woman, and she'll be able to be that mother to his children, and she does end up being the only mother to his children. And Gunbrit says, love is not supposed to hurt. Oh, got out of there before I could actually see it. And that, but Tammy's saying that Priscilla did hurt him badly. In the end, yeah, there's definitely pain and hurt. And I would agree that you cannot do that kind of thing to someone that you truly love. But I also believe that most people don't know what love is. And they have feelings that are similar to love, that they interpret to be love. But those feelings are not eternal. And so those are not truly love, but they mimic love. They make you feel like you're in love. They're kind of, I think, the feelings that you have at the beginning of a relationship that then allows love to blossom. They give you the ability to have enough interest in another person to truly find out about another person. But sometimes those relationships don't work out, and then that feeling dissipates. And was that truly love at all? Well, now you're getting into a lot of philosophical discussion. But I don't know. So you've just got to look at these pictures with your own experience and determine what you think that Elvis and Priscilla were thinking in these moments. And Gunn says that love is not supposed to hurt, and she hurt Elvis in many ways. Exactly. That's what I'm saying, Gunn. I'm not sure that would truly be love. But I'm also not sure that we all define love, or that when we say love, that many people understand how deep and eternal that particular feeling truly is. And Linda says infatuation. That's a good word, Linda. It's obvious Elvis isn't the love of Priscilla's life. That's a fact. I think from this end of the timeline that I would probably agree with that. I do not believe. I do believe he was the love of her young life. That he was, I think, her first true love. But I don't think, and when I say true love, I mean, we've all had that early love. And we each have to decide for ourselves whether that truly was love or not. But that is, Elvis was that man for Priscilla. And Luann says that love, there's so many words that are actually encapsulated in the word love, and that's true. That it encompasses a family of feelings, not just one particular feeling. But I think that's an issue that is caused by misuse of the word love. And that love, as we should understand it, is eternal and does not change. It does not have any negativity attached to it. And so that if you have a feeling that can morph from love into something else, that was never love. Like Linda says, it was infatuation or something else. But you have to be very distinct about what your feelings are. And I think most people, they don't understand how to read their own emotions. They are slaves to their emotions. You know, emotions are basically chemical reactions that are happening in your brain. And so these people are enslaved by those reactions and sometimes seek specific reactions, but they don't know why they're feeling them or what's causing them or how to actually control them or what those feelings are trying to tell them. And they misname them. And once you've misnamed them, it's hard to even think about them properly. And Linda says that when Priscilla is saying he's the love of her life still, it's just unbelievable. I, too, find it very hard to believe. Although, if I had been with the people that Priscilla was with later, I might, too, look back and say Elvis was the love of my life, because I don't think she was with winners. Like, nobody that was close to Elvis. But that's my personal opinion, and everybody gets to have their opinion here. So feel free to put it in the comment, put it in the chats. Make sure you hit the like button. And be sure to subscribe so that you can come back to another Hillbilly Cat History documentary. Now, there has been a few dislikes that are being hit in the last few episodes. Probably over the last couple of weeks or so. And that's great. If you don't like what I'm saying and you want to hit that dislike button, that's good too. Hit the like, hit the dislike. YouTube loves it all. YouTube doesn't care what it is as long as it's interaction. And if you don't like what I'm saying, be sure to put a comment and tell me what you don't like. And I'm happy to take a look at it and see what you think about what's going on right now, May 1st, 1967, in Elvis's life, or in any of the topics that we cover. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. And Tammy says that she had many lovers in her young life. I know what you're saying, Tammy, but she was with Elvis for a long time. So I think those young lovers may have been, I think some of us have had those too, right? The passerbys, the ones that we thought might spark into something, but they didn't. Of course, I know that some people believe that it was more sinister with Priscilla But we haven't really covered that on the channel. One day we will. We'll get into it all. I am thinking about doing a series on the Army years. A lot of people have shown a lot of interest in that. And Luann saying that 20 years with one man should have been the love of her life for 20 years. Yes, Luann, but if you were with that man for 20 years and you'd been with Elvis earlier, I don't know. I might pick Elvis. Gunn says that love or not, she wasn't the one Elvis was longing for to meet since high school, knowing what we do know. That's a good point, Gunn. I think Elvis had an idea that he could shape Priscilla, or that she had reflections of Gladys that she would grow into as she grew up, and I don't think those things came true. And Linda says that she had many relationships that she never disrespected other than Elvis, so this rubbish of love of her life makes no sense. That's a good point, too. Although those others she wasn't publicly making money off of. And that's what really kills me about anything negative that she says, is like everything in her life's been funded by this man. And Elizabeth agrees that Priscilla is not the love of Elvis's life. I don't think she was either. I'm not sure that he ever found the love of his life, to be honest. I think he was very much hoping it was Ginger at the end. But I don't think he ever really found her. And Tammy says Elvis wasn't with Priscilla for 2 years. He was doing movies and she was still in Germany. That's correct. That is absolutely true. And Linda says that that's her point. And so, yes, but when was the point? That's my question, is when is the point when Priscilla goes from a young, innocent child, because it had to be at some point, she had to be a young, innocent child. We were all a young, innocent child at some point. And then she moves into someone who's looking only for their own gain. It doesn't feel like she was that person at the moment she moved into Graceland, according to stories that others have told. But again, we haven't really gone through all that. But that's more what I would be interested in finding in Priscilla, is like, when is this moment? Kind of like we're discovering right now with Red West. He's had this rupture at the moment of the wedding. And from this moment forward, it kind of becomes okay not to be loyal to Elvis, because he wasn't loyal to you for a minute, in Red's mind. And I think Priscilla must have had a similar experience. Some would say it was before she met Elvis, but she was very, very young then. And Gunn says, so they could have been pressed into marriage. I don't think Priscilla was pressed into marriage. Was Elvis pressed into marriage? Again, I don't think you could make Elvis do anything he didn't want to do. But I don't know that Elvis had convinced himself that Priscilla was the love of his life. And I don't think that that's not two events that can't happen together. I think people get married all the time to people that they don't believe are the loves of their life. So Elvis may have had other reasons, but he does look very happy in these pictures. And so is he being an actor, or are these his true feelings? And are the feelings that we see a love for Priscilla, or is he just happy in the moment? Is he just happy with the thought of being a husband? Is he just reveling in a dream that is suddenly fulfilled that he's had his whole life, to be married? And Luann says that Priscilla was with Marco Garibaldi for 20 years, so he's the love of her life. I would say that her actions do show that, Luann. And here's another picture where Elvis is showing her ring, but it's not really in the hand, and the ring are not in enough clarity to really see the ring in much detail. Priscilla looks fairly happy in this picture. I have been told in a comment by a makeup expert that Priscilla is wearing heavy makeup in this picture. That this is makeup intended for photography because there were going to be pictures made this day. And of course, I have no clue about makeup at all. So I thought she looked very fresh-faced, and I think that's the way May Man reported it. But in this picture, you can see eyeshadow and mascara. I don't think this is the Cleopatra makeup that Albert Goldman tried to say it was. But she's definitely got eye makeup, a fair bit of it. She's definitely got some kind of lip gloss or lipstick on. And I can, in this picture, see some makeup on her cheeks. So and Tammy says that back then Elvis was naive. He did whatever the Colonel told him to. But eventually, no one could make Elvis do what he didn't want to. And we probably do have the Colonel and Vernon, because we saw how happy Vernon was about this wedding. We probably got them both telling Elvis, it's really time to get married, son. So you really need to go through with this. You've had her there for a while. It's time to make it happen. So he's getting this from two sides, and it's the two guys that, there's a triangle of people that are together for this whole ride. The Elvis Presley ride, and it's Elvis and the Colonel and Vernon. They're the only ones that make it all the way through once Gladys is gone. They're the only ones that make it through from the point that the Colonel comes on board. A couple of the Colonel's people, but really it's the Colonel, Elvis, and Vernon. And these two trusted individuals, the pillars of his, the foundational strength of his corporate structure, they're saying, you need to get this done. And he really respects these two guys. So I think even if they didn't put pressure on him, the mere advice that they would be saying, we really think it's time, he would probably take that very seriously. And Gunn says that looking back today and knowing what's happened, she does believe that Priscilla and her family may have had a plan. And I don't know. That's part of what we're trying to find out. And Linda Cudden says that Priscilla loved her makeup. She styled it herself. But she makes out that Elvis dressed her up like a doll. And Elizabeth says that I think Elvis wanted to have a family, and he wanted it to work out because he wanted kids, but it was not a good marriage at all. I think that's a very realistic explanation of exactly what happened here. And I don't think it's just Elvis. I think this happens to a lot of people every year, maybe every day, when they get into these marriages that aren't really good marriages, but they want these things that a marriage can provide. Like a companion and someone to love you and kids and a family, a place to come home to. And Tammy says that from her understanding, the Colonel told him he would lose his career similar to Jerry Lee Lewis. So we've heard that, Tammy, but we haven't seen the Colonel actually say that. We've seen people report that the Colonel may have said that, or said something similar to it. It's possible. But she'd already been living there all this time. I think it's more about, you're a man of your word. You said you were going to do this. The woman is now getting ready to turn 22. It's got to be done now. But I'm not saying that they didn't. compare anything to Jerry Lee Lewis either. And Luann says she hasn't got the know of Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry married his 13-year-old cousin. And people today are shocked by the age of the girl and the relationship that she was his first cousin. But that was not the shocking piece at the time, neither one. The shocking piece was that Jerry was already married. So by marrying this other girl, he's now committed bigamy. And the fact that he committed bigamy with a young, naive girl, well, that's the sin. Not that the girl herself is young and naive, but that he has hurt her in this way. So it was the bigamy more than anything else that really ticked people off about Jerry Lee. And Tammy says, that's why I said, from my understanding. Exactly. And we all come here. I know we've all read this different material. And we've seen people say different things. And none of us know exactly what was real and what was not. And sometimes we've invested a lot into some things that these people have said. Or some of these people. And we see that even now playing out with some of them that have video channels and such. It turns out from my studies that none of them are 100% right about anything. And that some of the things they believe deep down to be the truest are not true, but they are limited by their perspective of the events. And so they believe that they're true. They truly believe they're true. Like Marty Lacker truly believed the colonel forced Elvis to sign this contract about 50% while Elvis had a concussion. Now, he didn't do that. Did he force him to sign it before? Because Elvis signed it before. I mean, Elvis signed it. I don't know if he was forced, but he wasn't not of sound mind. The colonel didn't take advantage of Elvis while he was not of sound mind, other than perhaps to get rid of some of his friends like Larry Geller. But Elvis had a month and a half to make that all right. And he didn't do that. And now at this moment of time, on May 1st, Larry is gone. And Gunn says that knowing each other for so long, one can think they would feel if it was right or not. I agree. But I also don't think that people do what's right. I think there's a lot of people that they care about what's happening to themselves. And they prioritize themselves before they prioritize what's right. Now, I think in many instances, Elvis prioritized what was right. And that's one of the reasons that people are still drawn to him. And Linda says that Jerry Lee is a different scenario altogether, which I would agree with. And Gunn says that you can't compare it to Jerry. It's not the same at all. Exactly. And Luann says that Elvis is robbed by the publicity of the wedding because it damages his reputation when she leaves in a few years. I don't know about damage to the reputation as much. I mean, there's definitely, I think a lot of his fans would have been very sympathetic and empathetic towards him, though. And I'm not sure that some of his later songs could have been as impactful if he had not gone through the pain of that time. Doesn't mean that I wanted him to go through that pain, but what we've seen so far is that every struggle in his life has led to new artistic achievement, and that without the struggle, without the pain, there wouldn't have been the achievement. And Gunn says that Priscilla was a few months from 22. And Linda says that we watch so many different stories, we don't know who to believe. That's exactly right. And that's why we're cutting away all the fluff here. And we're getting back to the source material. And we're comparing directly what people said, as well as what we could find in the factual record, so that we can make our own decisions. And Tammy says that from what she understands, the Colonel said that if his fans knew he had a young girl living with him, it wouldn't be good. And I think that is true. I mean, I definitely do believe that the Colonel said that to Elvis. I'm not sure that he said it to him at this point in time about getting married. I think he would have said that earlier. And one of the things that I find in Elvis history is that events are conflated together and the timeline is compressed until it seems like Elvis lived his whole life in a week. And therefore, anything that he did at one time, you know, it was done all the time throughout his life. Like, we know that he liked to eat bacon, and people say that he ate a pound of bacon, but the truth is he had a pound of bacon cooked, and then he ate what he wanted to of that bacon. But he didn't even necessarily do that every morning. So a lot of this stuff gets out there like that. And the timeline gets all confused. And then when we pull it all apart, it turns out, oh, it's not nearly like we heard that it was. And Gunn says that it does become a sad story. That they break up and that this doesn't work out, and that we're at the very beginning of it right here, and we're seeing how it begins, but we know the future. Now, at this moment in time, Elvis and Priscilla, they don't know that future. In this moment in time, everything's still going to work out for them. And Linda says that she doesn't believe Elvis sang all the love songs that they were about Priscilla, the way Priscilla makes it out. I don't think so either, Linda, but I think what's beautiful about Elvis's love songs is that nearly every person, especially women, believe that it's about them. That because that's the way Elvis makes us feel, is that he's singing directly to you. So the fact that Priscilla feels that he's singing directly to her, I mean, I can't say that Priscilla doesn't really feel that way. I don't think he is singing directly to her. I think that's something different. And Tammy says that, yes, he said it again just before he got married. He absolutely might have. I don't put anything past the Colonel. And Luann says that, I feel that every time Elvis goes along with things, it goes wrong for him. I think there's a good point there, Luann, that Elvis, I believe, was a mythical figure. And he's mythical because people are following him. They're drawn to him. They're attracted to him. He is a natural leader. And so, when he chooses not to use his agency to lead, he's allowing someone else to make the decision. Yeah, it's usually the wrong decision, because it's really about him and his leadership and his ability to pick the right decision. He has that innately within him. And if you're following the other series where we're looking at the books, you can see that in those books, he's reading messages like that the answers are within. And Elizabeth says that she agrees that the timeline and things happen were not always correct. And Linda says that that's what she means. Elvis sings to all of us. I think he does, right? And so I can't look at Priscilla, who believes that Elvis is singing directly to her, and say, well, that's not true. It is. I don't think it's true that he is singing to Priscilla, but I absolutely believe that Priscilla believes he's singing to her. But we've run out of time and gone way past where we're supposed to be. So I've got to let you go for today. And we're going to come back to this wedding. We haven't got to the cake yet. We saw one piece of cake being eaten, but we didn't get our piece. So we're going to have to come back in the next episode so that we get our piece of cake. And until then, I'm going to send you out of here in a couple of vehicles that Elvis gave away in this song called Trust in Motion. You all keep on taking care of business.
Radio static, Memphis bound, WABQ homes a sacred sound. Green, green grass, again and again. The DJ's risk for a loyal friend. Elvis smiles, no words exchanged, just a test of love on a range. Keys in the dark, showroom and blow, a Cadillac waits in a silent show. Merry Christmas, GK said, a yellow chariot, tears on shade. What's fame and fortune worth, my friend, if it's not something we can lend? The Chevy Impala, still shining new, passed from blind to the Circle G crew. Gary